To say Chris Plonsky has significantly impacted her school, the communications profession, and the landscape of college athletics, well, that would be an understatement. This multi-honored women's sports pioneer has been recognized among her peers as one of the most influential administrators in college athletics. She just concluded her 32nd year at the University of Texas, where she serves as Executive Senior Associate Athletics Director and Chief of Staff for the Longhorns. Prior to her tenure at Texas, Plonsky worked in the communications offices at Iowa State and the Big East Conference. A recent recipient of CoSIDA's Mary Jo Haberback Trailblazer Award, Plonsky was named the Women Leaders in College Sports Administrator of the Year in 2014. She is a USA Basketball Board member, a USOC Collegiate Advisory Council member, and an Emeritus Board member of the National Football Foundation and College Football Hall of Fame. Plonsky is also the past president of NACDA, NACMA, and Women Leaders in College Sports. She is a past member of the Lead One Board, and she served on the NCAA committees for academic performance, women's basketball competition, and NCAA commercialization. She chaired the NCAA Division I Management Council in 2003 and will begin her tenure on the NCAA's Division I Women's Volleyball Committee this year. Today, she can add another award to that trophy case. She is now a Hall of Famer for CoSIDA.
Well, it's hard for athletic communicators not to note memorable times because that's really what we do. We're the chroniclers, the fortunate chroniclers of things that go on in this wonderful industry we're so lucky to work in. I mean, there's nothing like working on a college campus, number one. You're around young people, 17 to 23-year-olds typically, who are in just the most marvelous time of their lives. They're trying to figure out who they are. And so memorable moments really revolve around them and the people that I've identified them to come to these campuses that we're fortunate to work on. There's nothing more rewarding than to see someone develop and grow, not only as a competitor, but as a person, a leader. And then years later, have them come back and say thank you and to remember the times that they had on the campus that led them to be able to live their lives fully and successfally. I have one great story of a former track student athlete here. She was an Olympian. Her name is Mashami Robinson, and I had not seen her for a long time. And I had my head down one day in my office after I had returned to Texas in the early 90s. And I heard this knock on the door, and I popped up, and she was standing in the doorway, and she said, "Hi, I'm on my way over to thank the academic advisor who helped me here too." She said, "But I just want to thank all of you for structure, because I'm so much better at my life than if I had not had structure, and you all gave me structure while I was here." It's just those kind of spontaneous moments that, you sit back and go, makes it worthwhile. Believe it or not, I have never served on a NCAA sport committee. I have served on many NCAA committees, including some that definitely had a sports liaison. We had a women's basketball competition committee that Norland Finch chaired for years that dealt with officiating issues and rules issues and trying to, keep pace and continue to modernize and do good things for our great game of women's basketball. But, volleyball is, if you will, in a women's athletics parlance, there's women's basketball and volleyball sort of lead often in athletics departments. And even when I was at Texas in the early 80s, volleyball was dominant, as was basketball. And so I've always sort of paired those sports side by side. And now the game of volleyball is so dynamic, and they've fixed a lot of things that made it not as fan friendly early. The rally scoring, the rule changes. I mean, I'm so old that I remember unair conditioned Gregory Gym and sitting through literally 4-hour matches because you had to score when you served. It was, side out didn't mean anything unless you scored while you served. I often remind Jared Elliott about that, and Mick Haley too. But Volleyball will be fun, and I think it's a lesson for all sports, men's and women's, to really view something that has been crafted and tweaked over time to make it the exciting championship that we have today. That final in Omaha, and again, our hearts still hurt, but good for Kentucky. They played a perfect match. It reminded me of Villanova's men against Georgetown's men in the 85 men's Final Four. We played terrific, but they played more terrific. And but the buzz around that final, the television coverage, it was exciting. So I'm honored to be asked to go on that committee, and I can't wait. Plus, I'll get to see you guys more. Oh, again, I just want to thank CoSIDA, first of all, for its longevity. Communications is an art. It's a profession, and many of us were journalism majors, and I'm not even sure colleges, not every college anyway, calls its departments that it might have journalism anymore. But I was a hardcore J major, and very proud to have graduated from Kent State, where I was a student athlete for 3 years, but had just a wonderful opportunity to launch my career, really, not only as a professional communicator and working on the student paper and all those things that you have to do at a great journalism program, but also I got my start in athletics there as an undergraduate, working in the sports info office. And so what I'm thankful for is that it was important enough in the 1976 to 79 era, when I was still an undergrad, that somebody felt strongly that as women's athletics was maturing 4 years after Title IX, somebody needed to begin to pay attention to statistics and history and publications and help our coaches recruit. And that was really the seed for a career that I never dreamed would still in 2021 be involved in college athletics. Because again, I really thought I would just go be a sports writer or a news writer somewhere. But the commitment across the land by college presidents, by boards of trustees and regents, and by athletics directors to continue to not only grow athletics programs for men and women, young men and women, and offer scholarships, and then all the services that we have, we just benefit from it greatly. And so the honor is the blessing of working in that environment. It's not about awards or anything, although this one I must tell you is heartfelt, because I love this profession. I appreciate the colleagues along the way, the mentors I had. I think of so many people, from Tom Starr and Jamie Kimbrough, who were the first people I met at Iowa State in 1979. Terry Barnard gave me my first job at Kent State, coming to Texas under then women's AD Donna Lopiano, later coming back under men's AD DeLoss Dodds, getting a chance to work in a conference office in PR under the great late Dave Gavitt, and then my brother from another mother, Mike Tranghese, who taught us so much about how important our work was and how to communicate not only with coaches, but student athletes, and to keep our focus on the student athlete experience. And that's what publicity is. They deserve the stories. They're the ones who are putting themselves on the line. And so I will always be a fighter in any administrative position for the people that are working in those trenches. And now it's all digital. I affectionately tell Drew Martin, who's our chief of external affairs here, he's got all of the talented, beautiful people, as I call them, the artists, the videographers, the social media. It's incredible how ubiquitous the work is now. We used to have to stuff mailers and wait a few days to see if some editor or sports writer would pick up our notes and quotes. And now it's instantaneous. And I appreciate that. I think everybody does. But I'll tell you who really appreciates it is the student athletes, their families, our fans, and those who are, again, continually interested in helping these young people do the same thing they did in college, have a great experience and get a great degree and move forward in their life, whether they ever play sports again or not. Really, I would have told my younger self to do the same thing he did. Again, remember, eras are important. And what I find so refreshing about talking with young people who are pursuing their passion and wanting to be involved in athletics of some sort, whether it's communications or not, is, pay attention to the environment in which you're in and the landscape in which you're operating. At the time that I was breaking in, I paid attention to, again, I was young. I was a sophomore in college, and walking into an office where there were already dedicated professionals, Tom Boschenik, Dick Sapera, Ken Plonsky, by the way, with an I. I mean, he had the same name I did with a vowel difference on the end. Ken was our radio guy. And then, of course, Terry Barnard and Rose Fothauer at Kent. I mean, I just watched these people work around the clock and did what they did. So a younger person needs to take advantage of the opportunities. It was my wonderful coach and women's AD at Kent, Judy Devine, said, walk up to that hill, go to Morrill Hall. There's a guy in there, and I want you to start being a student assistant in the SID office. If you're a journalism major, this is part of your resume building, and we need somebody to start keeping track of our women's athletics events, stats, etc. That's how simple the start was. But I knew this when I walked through that door, there wasn't going to be like a maybe opportunity. This wasn't a maybe job. So it's applying yourself. And I tell young people, and I'm proud to say it, I mean, I worked hard and worked long. But part of that was because we had no technology. I mean, you carried your own Selectric typewriters. I mean, heck, I'm so old, they were mimeograph machines. So people don't even know what those instruments are. Dial rotary phones. None of this punch a button or talk to Siri to dial something up. So that consumed time. And that's why the hours were so long. The work was the same though. Detailed, organized, and professional and friendly. And nothing is more fun than pitching a story to someone. So you tell young people or your younger self how important it is to establish relationships with not just your coaches and the student athletes and your administrators, but with writers, with TV people, with radio people, because those are the people that controlled back then the amount of publicity space. And, we all had bosses who used to count column inches. I mean, I think we all did, and say, how come we can't get more? Well, now we can generate our own. And boy, is that a win for today's professionals. You are your own publicist and you control your own media. I think that's how victorious CoSIDA and its membership have been over these decades and decades, because they've succeeded when a lot of folks thought, maybe it's not quite as growing a opportunity in athletics. I think the inverse of that. It is more important than ever before. This will sound like a cliche term, but it's make yourself indispensable. And that's usually to somebody that is already at that table. I watched over time how important, for example, Butch Henry, who replaced Tom Starr at Iowa State, became to our coaches, and how deft he was at not only media relations work, but when the athletic director was facing either a problem or a crisis, providing just such great wisdom. And then coming to Texas and having the chance to work around Jones Ramsey and Bill Little, just tremendous leaders, gifted people, and just watching how they made themselves available in the most appropriate way to administrators and really lent advisement and wisdom that no one else had. Because what really good PR professionals do is they can tell the story from the other side. And I think we all learned over time how to almost operate like media people for the people we worked with. And when you can become indispensable in that way to say, this is what the media is going to focus on, and we have to prepare for this, It's crisis management, or it's a big news piece that you want to put out there. Your ability to sort of read the tea leaves for your boss, the next time they have a big issue, you find yourself being asked to be brought to those rooms because of the wisdom and the advisement that you might have imparted previously. And then the other thing is, again, to widen your horizons in your relationships. Make yourself available even when the job may not be assigned to you. So that term work beyond job description, I think, is really critical. I appreciate your remembering the passion that I had for, the academic All-America group or the writing contest, but that was because I had listened to other professionals, be it Herb Hardnett or John Heiser or Roger Baldessari or Fox Bryant, Fat Fox at Nebraska, Dave Kaywood, talk about how we needed to peel back the onion on college athletics and tell the stories behind the stories, like the what else besides the scoreboard. Well, these are students, they're getting degrees, they're really doing two things on a college campus. They're working on their craft and their gifts, but they're also getting a degree. And so I learned very quickly how important the academic advisors and the compliance directors and the student athlete development career director people were, as well as sports medicine. And now we have sports science, nutrition. These are the people that help our student athletes and our coaches become great. They are the behind the scenes people in the beehive, who don't, again, get all the fame and glory, but they're the people who work with the administrators along with the PR people to make that magic happen that please our fans and our constituents, and certainly our university presidents and our alumni. Well, I want to thank my mother and dad for giving me a real grounded experience as a kid. And as I grew up, we were a very, middle-class Catholic family. I have 4 younger sisters who I'm going to be with Thursday and Friday in Ohio. My mom is 86 and a half and still walks 2 miles a day. So their energy and their, again, the way we were raised, just that faith, family, values was important, as was hard work and education. I also want to shout out again to some other women that I looked up to early. The Debbie Jennings and the Debbie Harmisons and Linda Venzons, Joyce Aschenbrenner, Elise at USC. Our basketball teams were so good. We saw each other every year, and they were going to win some. And finally, Coach Conrad and her perfect season in '86, which is still one of the epic moments I think I've ever witnessed. You can only be perfect first one time, right? That team is still close to my heart, and I still keep in touch with all those kids on that squad. So I think we need in this environment to mention women and women of color who have succeeded in a tough sports world. And I think we're going to continue to see diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just for women, but for men of color as well in our domain. We need more leadership that looks diverse like our student athlete populations do. And I want to continue to have the energy to pour into Texas for our great boss, Chris Delcani, who there's been no more energetic, wonderful leader than Chris. And he knows what the experience is about. He was a college student athlete, and I love his approach to this business. I love his approach to seeing around corners for the future, and just proud to serve not only him, but President Jay Hartzell and the University of Texas.
From the University of Texas, Chris Plonsky.